My name is Sunshine. It's obviously not my real name, but for anonymity's sake. And if you do know me, you don't. Like, let's please help me to keep my career in one piece. Uh, yeah. So again, my name is Sean, Sunshine, and uh, I am a 29-year-old second generation Korean American, meaning my parents came to the States when they were, fairly young adults. And I was the first one born in the state in my family. I was born and raised in Southern California for most of my life. I was there, actually, yeah, I was there for most all of my life, other than, going to and from other states for work purposes. And currently, I am in the state of Washington for work. I am uh, a soldier for the U.S. Army, so that's kind of why I bounce around a lot from here to there. I've lived in Georgia, Missouri, Oregon, Washington now, and traveling back and forth between Korea and such just for vacation and family purposes as well. Uh, but yeah, that's pretty much that's pretty much my current background. I've been through a lot in my life. Again, 29 years is not too much, but I am about to hit the big 3-0, and it really does feel like a jump between the 20s and 30s. Like I feel like it's gonna hit me pretty hard. I don't know. I'd say I'd have to choose. It was a birthday. I think that is my most cherished memory in my head right now. It was about 3 years ago. I was working a civilian job, and I got home pretty late. Uh, just as work does, it tends to run late most times. And I walked through my home, and my small one-bedroom apartment is just decorated and fleshed out with all these tacky, childish looking decorations, but it was like so heartwarming and so touching. The tackiness went away and became something of like a beautiful moment. And my brand new puppy running around in the living room, trying to eat food off the table when it could. It's an Asian household, so we have tables that are like low on the ground, so she's like it's right there for her. And I could hear my wife cooking in the kitchen, or my ex cooking in the kitchen, and the smell, the visual, the colors, it just it I haven't felt as happy to be celebrating a birthday as I have in that moment. Like I couldn't remember a time before, other than when I was a child where I felt so, ecstatic about being there and being there with somebody who I loved and cherished so much. It just made everything just seem so much, you know, better, I guess, more wonderful. But yeah, I that was that is the most cherished memory that I have at the moment. Yeah. My biggest regret would have to be not applying myself. I didn't apply myself enough. Is what I'm trying to get at. I didn't apply myself enough in school when I was a kid, middle school, high school. I didn't apply myself enough when I was working in the civilian sector. I wasn't hungry enough for like certain promotions or roles or positions in companies. I wasn't applying myself enough when I was in the army, the first go around, my first contract. Uh, I just kind of like rolled with the punches and listened to whatever somebody told me was the right answer instead of like trying to push forward and, get my career together to where I wanted to be. And I didn't apply myself enough to my relationship with my ex. I didn't love her enough the way that she needed to be loved. And so the relationship ended up breaking down just because I could not get myself to that point. And yeah, most really all relationships are a give and take, but there's just, when you are in a certain dynamic of a relationship and you are, the head of that relationship, there are certain roles that are and certain ideals that you're supposed to live up to. And when you don't hit those marks, then it just kind of breaks everything down. And yeah, it has to be, not applying myself enough. And in the new year coming up, that's honestly something I plan to change about myself. I'm going to, I re-enlisted in the army, so I'm going to apply myself to my career as much as I can. I'm applying myself in every field that I'm in, just so that I can look back and say, you know what, you did enough. You did as much as you could. And my I might have other regrets, but not trying is not going to be one of them. But one thing that I wish I could tell people is the fact that I am depressed. You know, it's a hard concept to get, especially you know when the average person, the idea of depression is terrible, like want to stay in all day, suicidal, uh, just like major depression. Like that's the main idea of what a depressed person is, but that's not always the case. Depression comes in a range of flavors, and I am a part of that scale, and I have been for a long time. It's not just after my separation from my wife, but you know, since I was fairly young, with my family circumstances and everything that I've gone through, uh, I've built up, you know, ways to combat my depression. I've built up ways to, you know, have an outlet for it in a good, healthy manner where I'm not suicidal. I'm not, thinking about the next thing that I could do to possibly, hurt myself. But I do find myself creating situations where I set myself up for failure, like subconsciously, like, I set myself up for disappointment. And, with the idea of, oh, I am going to be disappointed, so it's going to be okay. And that's not a good, outlet. That's not a good way to handle depression. But, once I catch myself, it's fine. But if I don't until the very end, then, it is what it is. I just keep rolling on. But when I'm talking to people and, even between our little conversation here, like I don't give off the signs of depression. I don't give off as a depressed person. I am extroverted. I talk a lot and, I like to laugh. I do enjoy laughing. Uh, but, you know, I don't. And the thing is with depression and people who are depressed, you don't want to become a burden. You don't want to tell people that you're depressed. You don't want to let people know how much your life sucks for you. Because again, you don't want to be a burden. You don't want to create that distance between you and others and just make things either awkward or like, possibly push them away because they don't know how to handle you at your lowest point. And I get that. I do. I try not to do that. I do try to open up to people because I feel like if I'm an example of especially a cis het male, like, a straight male being able to be open about their feelings and emotions, then I give permission for other straight men and anybody else, but mostly, there is a problem with society about straight men not being an emotional type of person. So like I'm trying to give uh show the other men that it's okay to be emotional. It's okay to talk about your emotions, but I am still, keeping it bottled up most of the time. I'm keeping my depression at an arm's length from me And I do that not by, fake it till you make it kind of mentality where like I'm trying to fake being happy, but I live in my depression and I feel genuine happiness in short bursts. Like when I'm hanging out with friends and we're talking, I'll be happy. But once there's a lull in the conversation and they go off doing their own thing, I'll be stuck in my own little world, on my phone or something like that until the next event that triggers me to be happy. Um, yeah, and I just love the moments that I'm living in. I've That's what matters most to me, I think. Like loving that one particular moment and just riding that moment for a while, but also accepting that you are depressed, there are cases where you can't be happy and that's fine. It's okay not to be okay, but you can't let that be your default, you know? But yeah. Mm. I've had many struggles like everybody else, and I don't like the idea of comparing struggles, like just because I've had it worse or you've had it worse doesn't negate the fact that our lives are hard from our perspective, perception is reality. Uh, I might not be homeless and living on the streets, but I've gone through a lot and that makes me the way I am, you know? I just want to get that out there first. But some of the struggles that come to mind, are moments that I feel like I didn't have full control over, but I should have. Like these struggles aren't technically my fault, but in the back of my mind, it's always nagging at me like, oh no, you were the one that was, pathetic and not giving it your all. And again, that goes back to my regret, like not applying myself. The first struggle would be in high school. I barely graduated high school, and I graduated with a 1.8 GPA. So, suck on that, Asian statistics and stereotypes. Yeah, I graduated with a 1.8. Not because, I was a terrible student. I was, admittedly a terrible student, but that's besides the point. I was working three jobs at the same time going to high school. Uh, After my father left and with Asian households, I don't know if you, Chris, feel this as, strongly as I do, but as a second generation American, I was raised on the emphasis and ideologies of old style Koreans, where I, being the firstborn male in the family, was, kind of the head of the household if my father were ever to leave. Like it's the same thing if my family had a big family corporation here in the States, that would be my corporation. Like I would take over just because I am the firstborn son, you know? But with that benefit comes the responsibilities of taking care of the family. So when my father left, that role fell onto me. And juggling between school and work, I just didn't think school as a necessary component to my well-being. Money was more important. Paying the bills was more important. Making sure there was food on the table. School was a second, like an afterthought. But legally, I still had to go. The only reason why I graduated was because I made a deal with all my high school teachers saying if I only ever got A's and B's on tests and exams, can I pass the class with a D? Just pass. And they said yes. Most of my teachers understood my circumstances and they allowed it to happen. So I never did any homework. I didn't turn in any classwork. Group projects, like, I feel bad for my classmates, but I barely did what I did the bare minimum just so I could focus on work, you know? So that would be my first struggle in life, just dealing with that, just going through high schools. High school was a struggle in and of itself. And then on top of work, like missing, time to play with friends and stuff like that. As a child, you want to, but you can't. Uh, but in, you know, like a bridge to that struggle, my second struggle would be trying to fill that hole my father leaving had left in our family. Um, you know, for those who know trauma and mental health and psychology and stuff like that, you may have come across a term like parentification. It's a situation where a child takes on a much bigger role than they should, and thus becomes parentified in the home that they're living in. They take responsibilities for important events and situations, and they really shouldn't be in that situation, but they are. And most children of immigrant parents, most Asian Americans, and possibly even Mexican Americans, Latin Americans, they'll know this struggle. When you're growing up in a family with multiple siblings and you're the oldest, or if you're growing up in a family where your parents don't speak English, you know, you're from a very young age, you're taking care of children, you're translating important documents, you're helping with tax forms, and like if any of these things go wrong, it it affects the family as a whole, but if the burden falls on you because you felt like it was your responsibility, your parents were expecting great things from you, like, and it all kind of like it traumatizes you that in a way that you don't recognize as trauma, like. But even if let's say you're in with your grandparents and they're ill and you have to take care of them, same situation. Like you have been parentified to a point where if you fail, then you know that failure leaves a big mark in your life. And I don't know, like when my dad left, I felt responsibility for that because he didn't just leave on his own accord. Circumstances between him and my mother, him, having extramarital affairs and whatnot, they set up the base for it. But ultimately, I was the defining like line in the sand because I'm the one who kicked him out of the house after physical altercation between my parents. And because I did that, and because of the role I had in my family, I felt it my responsibility more than ever to take, being that head of household. I had to raise my brother. I had to be a parent for him. On top of that, I had to work and provide for my family, but as well, I needed to be a husband substitute for my mother, an emotional substitute, somebody that she could lay all her burdens on and de-stress from her workday and whatnot. But as a 14, 15-year old child, that's not something that should be your burden, right? But I felt like it was. I felt like it had to be because I felt like I created that situation. Looking back on it, as an adult, obviously it's not my fault that my parents got separated. But as a child, you don't really think about that. It's not my fault, and I don't know. It just kind of affected my growth. And the thing about being parentified is that when you are, that child, when you are taking responsibility, you have all these adults around you saying, "Oh, you're so mature. Oh, you're so great. Oh, your parents are so lucky to have a child." Like it boosts your ego. You feel good, and that makes you want to take on more and more responsibilities. But that's also a fucking trauma response that you shouldn't be doing. And as an adult, you should not be putting that burden on your children. That makes me, it's a defining reason why I don't want kids. It's, I don't want to ever possibly put my children in that position, like subconsciously, unknowingly. I don't want to put that burden on them. And for us millennials, older millennials, and was it the Gen Xers, even the baby boomers, like all these older generations, they might look at that and say like, "Oh, I went through that. It made me a better person. It's character development. Like you're just being soft." And it's like, it's not though. Trauma builds character, yes, but it's not necessary. It's just not. And yeah, I just I feel like I failed my family in that aspect, and that's also another regret that I have, not applying myself more into that role, which I shouldn't have been in that role, but since I already was in it, I should have applied myself more. I should have been there for my brother. I should have been there for my mother. But yeah, that's one of the struggles that I had to go through in life, you know. Um, and I guess the third struggle would, even to this day, would be the struggle to keep pushing. You know, it's a struggle to get out of bed most days. It's a struggle, not just because I have to wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning to go to work every single day, and then get home at like 8 o'clock at night, but it's not just that. It's just a struggle to keep pushing because you don't know where the finish line is. You don't know if all of this is going to be worth it at the end. And you don't know if you are going to feel like it's worth it. Like, it doesn't matter if, somebody says, "Oh, the finish line's right there and it's a pot of gold." If you don't feel like that pot of gold was worth it, then, it's a struggle to even get there. Yeah. All right, so the proudest moments are like, few and far between. So this part is gonna be the shortest part, I think. I think the first proudest moment that I could think of was graduating high school. Just the fact that I even graduated at all, just made it seem like, oh, I did enough kind of thing. And me graduating allowed me to join the army. So that kind of rolls into the second proudest moment of me joining and graduating my first iteration of my service term because I had to go and swear in. I had to take that, uh, what it's the ASVAB. I forget what the acronyms are called, but it's essentially like a standardized placement test to see like what score you would get and what jobs you're allowed to be in the army. I took that. I passed, with flying colors. Uh, and I passed basic training and I passed my first initial advanced technical course. And, I passed it all and I felt very proud of myself at that moment. I was in the greatest shape I've ever been. I ran 11 minutes and 50 seconds for 2 miles. So that was the fastest time I've ever run. And yeah, I was very proud of myself in that moment. And, you know, if anybody knows me, you know that you could search my Facebook photo history and you'll see all these what we call boot pics, where it's looking back on it, it's like, oh wow, I can't believe I was that kind of person to take that many photos of me in, uniform and stuff like that. But, at the moment, at the time, it's, you feel really proud of yourself, so you want to take those photos and you want to upload it. But yeah, I think my latest and proudest moment would be my overall growth in the last yeah, 2 to 3 years. Not just, I'm not talking about like age wise because I do not want to turn 30, but I'm talking about my mental growth, in areas of recognizing my mental health and trying to deal and analyze and understand myself better instead of sweeping my problems under the rug. I'm now tackling them head on and recognizing that I have depression, recognizing that I have certain mental issues. Not like I'm psychotic and I want to kill people issues, but more like, oh, I don't want to get out of bed today, I don't want to uh, draw and practice my passions and hobbies, and the reasons why. And I feel like I've grown a lot as a person. Even through my separation with my ex, I took away a lot of, growth from that. And, most relationships I know, they end very badly. Couples don't, when they end, they don't talk to each other. They delete all their history and shit like that. But as somebody who feels like an adult, I have maintained a sort of friendship with my ex. I still love and care for her, but like family, like how I love and care for my little brother. So, I'll help and I'll offer help, but the moment they turn it down, I'll be like, okay, you're on your own. Good luck. And I think like if my brother, fucked up, the same thing, I'm gonna be like, you fucked up. Like, that's on you. I'll help to try and correct your path, but that's not on me anymore. It's not on me to fix your life. And that's kind of the same approach I'm taking with my ex. And it seems to be working. Like for me, anyways, it helps heal my heart. I'm not upset with her for wanting to, divorce and separate. I'm not upset with my life for the way it turned out. It is what it is. And sometimes that's the simplest answer is, sometimes the correct one. It is what it is. You just gotta learn to move on. My parents got divorced when I was fairly young. Mine separated when I was 13. I kicked my dad out of the house when I was 13. Um, but it's been going, the issues that led up to that had been going on way before. I was 10, 11 years old in elementary school, and, my father would stay out late. He would go drinking every night. He would, not come home for a number of days. And it wasn't so wild and weird just because, he is a general contractor. His job takes him all across the state to do construction work here and there. So him being gone for a few days wasn't all that, you know, weird or out of the ordinary for us. But the way my mother started acting that was the trigger. And that was subconsciously, I guess, what set me down a path of like, being a terrible student. Starting from the age of 11 in fifth grade, I started failing my courses in school. My home life wasn't that great. My grandparents lost their home, so they moved in with us, but my grandparents on my dad's side. But they and my mother never had a good relationship just because my dad's side of the family were fairly well off people. And my mother comes from a very poor family. And in Korea, that dichotomy of poor and rich are very, like, severe. And so they, hated the idea of my mother and my father being in a relationship in the first place, but my father, being the rebel that he was, up and married my mother anyways when they were young. Um, but around the time I turned 10 and 11, they started fighting more often. My father started not coming home as often. My grandmother, my grandparents who had moved into our family home, started bickering with my mother more often. So I'd see all these fights happening in front of me. I'd see the emotional damage and toll my mother was taking. I'd see the emotional damage my grandmother was taking. And my father was nowhere in sight to like, alleviate some of this because he did not grow up in a good home either. Like he is also a circumstance of his home life. And, you know, it's not all his fault, but again, we are not responsible for what happens to us, but we are responsible for how we react to those situations. Him and the way he reacted was, not the correct choice. So, we left our family home. This was our home, but we just gave it to our grandparents instead of fighting them. And we started bouncing around from house to house and city to city. And I've lived in seven different cities. Uh, or eight different cities now by this point. Just because we bounced around so much, and the number of like in a matter of 3 years, we lived in four different houses. Just because we were renting here and there. Like, it was fairly ridiculous. And as a child, when you lose, your connections with your friends, it's hard to make new ones, especially for a second generation Korean American whose first language is Korean. Like I did not speak English until I was, 7 years old. I was in English as a second language course until I was 10. Like it was hard for me to make friends. So losing the ones that I already had was, fairly difficult. So that also spiraled into my academics not being so well. And then, we found out that my father was cheating. They and the fights in between my parents got exacerbated. It got worse, and I had to bear witness to all of this. You know, and it's not so uncommon. Everybody sees their parents fighting, but everybody internalizes that and they deal with that differently. Me and my brother grew up in the same household in the same way, but he and I are extreme polar opposites just because of our mentality. I had the mental fortitude of, I'm the firstborn. And I was, it's not something that, I watch a K drama and I'm like, oh yeah, that's my role. No, like this is something that was thrust onto me from by my family my entire life. I was honest to God, to I feel bad for my younger brother, but I was given more love than him. I was given more attention than him because I was the firstborn male. Because they expected me to be more for the family than they expected out of him. For him, they just, told him do whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. But for me, I had routes that I had to take. So that built my mental fortitude, but also kind of, traumatized me in a different way. My brother, having felt less love, less attention, got traumatized in another direction. And, he is who he is now. He's not bad, and I'm not saying he's a bad person. Between the two of us, I'm pretty sure I'm more worse off than he is, but, it is what it is. But going through watching your parents and your parents' marriage and the love that you felt in your family fall apart in the span of 3 years. In the span of 3 years, everything fell apart. As a child, that feels like a lifetime. Now, 3 years, now at my age, looking back 3 years, it's not even, it's maybe 10, 11% of my life. But back then, it took up, 30, 40%. So it's a big chunk of your life that you're looking back on as a child, and it sucks. It sucks. It does. But you are not. You cannot be the victim of circumstance. You cannot. I chose not to just stay in that mindset. I chose not to blame my parents for the way that my life turned out. I took responsibility of my own future. I joined the army when I knew that college wasn't an option for me. I saved up enough money to, live on my own, rent a place. I bought multiple cars under my name, some of that got repossessed for certain situations and whatnot. But, I did what I could and what I thought was leading to a better life for myself. And that's the takeaway. I've been through a lot. And as I'm sure a lot of your viewers and a lot of people listening to this have, we go through a lot, but we have to take steps to ensure that our future is our own, that we are in control of that. I got married. I never thought I would. Watching my parents grow up, growing up and, separating. My dad's younger brother getting married and then separating. My dad's younger sister, my aunt, never getting married because she didn't like being in a nuclear family. My grandparents fighting constantly, and everybody else around me, like my friends' family, is like they aren't so well off either. I never wanted to get married. I didn't want to put myself in that position, but I did because I found somebody that I thought, hey, this she makes me want to be with her. You know, you are not the victim of circumstance. You cannot be the victim of circumstance just because, you think, you've seen marriages fall apart all the time doesn't mean that yours will. Mine did. You know, eventually I did become that same statistic, but I still took that chance, and I'm a better person for it. It's the same thing like, some girl like, saying all men are bastards because one boyfriend cheated on her. Like, yes, I'm sorry that happened to you, but You cannot be the victim of circumstance. Not every person is going to be the same. Not every situation is going to end the same way. You need to try your best for yourself. And that's my point to this story. It's a long story and it's a pointless story overall, but I just want you guys to know that I'm in a better place and you will be too. So everything that I've talked about thus far, from my parents to my own separation to, all the stuff that I've been through in life, it led me to this point. I am who I am today because of what happened, because of what I've been through. And, would I change some things? Yeah, sure. Like I wish my parents were smarter with their money so I don't have to struggle as much. I do wish certain aspects of my life were different, but I am who I am and where I am today because of everything that's happened. And for me, it's just figuring out how to be the best version of me from now on, moving forward to be the best version of me. It's if you reflect back on everything that's happened to you, there are instances where you look back and think, I did the best I could. And there are certain instances where you look back and think, oh, I wish that would have turned out better. But it is what it is. Just, you gotta learn to move on. So for me, I joined the army the first time when I was 18, right out of high school, and I served for 6 years. And then I got out for three because I thought, I don't want to do this anymore. Um, and during that 3 year period, I got married and I got divorced and I got separated. And, I'm going through a lot right now. But now that I've re-enlisted, my future is one where I am trying to pave a path for myself to have an easier, a better, a happier life in the future. My plans aren't stopping at 5 years from now, 10 years from now. My plans are ongoing because I I always joke around with people and say like I do plan to kill myself when I'm 70 because I don't want to be incontinent and possibly have children that need to change my diapers. Like I don't want that. Nah, like I'd much rather die earlier. And my plan was to like, jump out of go parachuting, jump out of a plane, but instead of a parachute, I would have a tombstone strapped to my back. So like wherever I land, that's my grave. Like that's where just fucking mark me there. But that's just a joke because for me, I do plan on sticking with this career, but not this career is not my all. It's not going to be it because it's just for stability. It's just for finances. I plan to become officer in the army just because that's where the money is. I plan to get all the certifications and was it degrees that I can get so that if I ever choose to leave the army, I have a avenue where I can be successful. And then on top of that, I didn't mention this before, but I am an artist. I do it. I used to do art for commission and as a type of job, but I am doing it now as more of a hobby. But I do plan on taking my passions and creating something more. You know, becoming something that I could look back on 20 years from now and think, hey, that was fun. That was great. I did it. I'm not saying I'm going to be the greatest artist in the world. I definitely nowhere near that level. But it's you need hobbies and passions to get through life. Um, you know, on top of that, I go camping, I go sightseeing, I travel the world. Like I want to do more of these things, and that's what my future entails because that's what makes me happy. And honestly, I'm probably never going to get married again just because of the way this last one turned out. But that does not mean that I do not want to be in a relationship. I just don't want the hassle of, marriage and paperwork and whatnot. I want to be happy. I'm sure everybody does. Everybody wants to be happy. Some people actually, they want to be happy, but they're stuck in this, depressive and self-loathing rut because even though they want to be happy, being sad makes them feel good. They want to be sad subconsciously. And once you recognize that you are in that place, then you can start to work on yourself to make yourself better, to get to that happy place. But until then, focus on yourself. Focus on the things that brighten up your day just a little bit and choose. Life is all about choices. Everybody thinks, like with love, for instance, everybody thinks that love is a feeling, an emotion that kind of like starts and sets your heart ablaze, but it's not. Initially, yeah, it might be. Initially, you might look at somebody, you might meet eyes with somebody and think, my God, you know, I love this person. But love, like everything else in life, is a choice. You have to choose to love every single second of every day. I I fought all the time with my wife, as most couples do. Most couples will fight. There's not one couple that's gonna go through their entire relationship without a single argument or a fight. But what makes or breaks that relationship, what makes the difference is at the end of the fight, even during the fight, you love that person. You choose to love that person. And I choose to love my life and I choose happiness. And everybody needs to choose to be happy. You can't, happiness just doesn't come to you. You gotta want that. And apart from everything else, no matter what my future looks like financially or career wise, as long as I'm happy, I'm fine. I'm, as long as I'm happy, I probably won't kill myself at 70. Who knows? For me, it's coming up to the end of the year. Christmas has already passed, New Year's is right around the corner. And apart from choosing to be happy, choosing to love life, right? No matter what you've been through, no matter how hard you guys might be struggling right now, the year is everything ends. The year is going to end. Your struggles are going to end. It's just moving on to the next big thing, moving on to the next small thing, even that makes you happy, makes you want to live a little bit longer. And, for me, that's, my career, my passions, my art, the friends that I've made along the way, the best friend that I've kept over the last 15, years of my life. These small things all paint a bigger picture of your life, of who you are. So I just want to say, you are important. You are valued. You are loved by someone. You might not think you are, but you are. And I want you to start thinking about that, like no no other person in this world is going to care about you more than yourself. Okay? Nobody can love you more than you love yourself, and you should love yourself no matter what. No matter what happens. This is your life. This is your story. This is my story. But you have your own story, and you should love yourself for that story. You've struggled all the way here, and you've made it this far. You're an amazing person, and you deserve all the happiness and love that you are willing to give yourself and accept from others. And again, it's the new year. This year is ending. The last 3 years was a fucking mess. But hopefully, with 2022, we are gonna have a better time. I wish everybody a happy new year. Uh, if you feel like you're not loved, I love you. I don't know you, but I do. I love you. And if you need somebody to reach out and talk to, I'm always here for you. Like I said, I, share my story openly. So if you have questions, you can always contact me. Uh, I don't know if there's any contact information that was Chris is gonna put up, but for me, you could find my page at on Instagram. I think that would be the easiest at Art Uncultured. It's ART, uncultured. That's just that, all one word, no spaces, no periods, nothing like that. That's my professional page, but we can talk there. Um, Again, Happy New Year, and I hope everybody has a great 2022 that'll leave the last 3 years in the dust.